Hello everyone, and welcome to this next video discussion in the RICS Tech Partner Series. My name is Andrew Knight and I lead the global data and tech work here at RICS. I sit within the standards regulatory and thought leadership part of RICS, and my role is to look at the impact of data and technology right across the built and natural environment. With over 130,000 members worldwide, working right across the property life cycle, working in land, residential, commercial, alternative assets and infrastructure. It's clearly a very broad area of practice for us, and obviously the impact in data of technology is incredibly profound. Now, I'm really happy today to have Sankka from Lattice join us today. So Sankka, please do join me on the call.
Thank you, Andrew, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. Yeah.
Great to have you on the call. Now, although we to some extent obviously are talking about bits and bytes and data and technology, I would like to start with perhaps the more kind of human people element, because it's very much a people business, the built environment sector, and it's interesting to really understand the kind of background and backstory of the people and teams that are bringing these new developments into the sector. So it'd be great to hear a bit about your background and the origin story of Lattice as you develop the technology.
So I come from civil engineering background. I did my studies in civil engineering and then moved mostly into property and commercial real estate. So over the past 5-6 years, it's been more about investing into real estate and creating technology with that. So incidentally, I came across, this is how the Lattice started. So I had an opportunity to go to one of my friends' construction site. He was a project manager there, and it just got me back 10 years back when we used to note down everything on pen and paper, and I really thought that things haven't changed much and this is a real opportunity, and that's how I started Lattice.
So you mentioned there that kind of visit to a construction site and a realization that in many respects technology hasn't impacted certain parts of that process. You talked about it, almost a pencil and paper. What is Lattice doing as a platform as you develop it, and really what is that problem that you're solving? Because clearly at one extent you have pens and papers, but what's the impact on the construction sector?
Yeah, so just to go back, I think one of the major things which I realized back then was we used to collect everything, go on an Excel sheet, put it across, send it to project managers. And I think that has stayed longer now. So everyone works in silos. I think most of your webinars also say about this, that everyone has their own format of data, and that's how you need sort of a centralized information board where you can do it. So Lattice is basically a material information mapping technology. So what we do is we track materials from production to on-site installation. And one of the reasons why we're doing it is what we've understood is this process has its own data circle, or critical path data. So right from getting permission, design approval, to production, to transit, to warehousing, to finally getting installed on site. This creates a lot of data trail, and that usually sits on email chains or multiple Excel sheets. So what we're bringing is we are sort of bringing a. Let me just share my screen.
Yeah, thanks. I can see that now, Sankka. Yeah.
So we're bringing sort of a collaborative space for all the stakeholders to sort of input their data. So what we do is we have extract the information from BIM model, and we create an automated workflow where subcontractors or project teams can come and update their information. Based on that information, what we do is we create an insight, which is like supply chain, documentation, mapping, and digital twin. So in the insight page, we can give sort of a progress monitoring of where your elements are, whether it's been installed, which phase of supply chain each elements are. So, and also in the documentation, we kind of give a centralized information board of how the progress is happening overall, like what's your production details, what's your installation rate going. This gives sort of an data visibility or supply chain visibility to all the stakeholders at one place, so that data driven decisions can be taken.
So, I mean, obviously, supply chains have come, I think, very much into the lexicon of ordinary people. I think with the pandemic and the inability to get goods around the world in the way that we'd kind of taken for granted. Where do you see that being particularly impacted in the built environment? Because clearly some of these items are increasingly being made off-site in terms of modern methods of manufacturing. There's clearly been inflationary pressures, and obviously if I think about the UK as an example, we have that whole idea of the golden thread, as it's called, in terms of understanding materials within buildings from a fire safety perspective. What's your overview of perhaps how the market is reacting to the importance of this visibility of the supply chain?
Yeah, one of the most important thing is we've been seeing for the past couple of years. There's been multiple disruptions happening in terms of supply chains, right from the COVID, right now what's happening in and around Russia and Ukraine. So there are multiple things which is happening in and around the world. So if you see most of the elements like facade panels or something, these are very expensive materials. They usually being sourced from China or somewhere. So, and they are very important to the project performance as well, because if you see on the outside, it's like they come in very complex sequence. And if you do not have the enclosure of the building ready, the other trades fall behind. So you need to make sure that all these come on time and you have the visibility. So that alone gives you a lot of understanding of how we should track. And another aspect is the data is also need to be, it's just not tracking, elements where they are in supply chain, but also having that information for, project managers to understand where the source of it is. It's more like end-to-end traceability, but it having the information about where its origin has started, so that in unfortunate sequences which we are seeing about the golden thread as well, you have that information right available at the end of the project. So,
and presumably an important part of this is some kind of form of visualization. I mean, you showed us briefly there with the platform. Do you see that as becoming really just a non-negotiable piece, that people will demand that kind of visualization of the data? Because, yes, you can store it in a digital form, but I guess people increasingly want to have a very simple way of looking at that kind of data.
yeah, so you would see visualization is part of our lives every day. So if you're going out now, you will not leave without seeing your Google Maps to see your journey, how much it's going to take. At the same time, when you order your food or Uber, you always see that information where it is, how much time it is, where the route is. So that just gives you sort of a better decision-making ability. And I think that will become more and more accepted in the industrial 4.0. So right now you've heard about the buzzword called digital twin. So digital twin is not just visualization for us. I think digital twin will be more about the modulation and having the data work around that model. So it's just not visualizing an object or a process, but what you can do with that data and have a run a modulation. So for example, I think Formula One is a brilliant example. Before, if they bring the car into origination, they actually have a digital twin mapping, modulation, and all this. So I think digital twin and visualization will play a huge part, and that's quite relevant. Like all the other segments will go more into visualization, and construction, for instance, is one of the leading ones in it, because we have the BIM model, we have these opportunity here. So I think construction can lead the way for digital twin and all for the industrial 4.0. So it's a big opportunity for construction to step up and show that other industry how we can improve, not only just how we improving processes using visualization, but in other sentence, like, using cloud,
Yeah.
Internet of Things, and other sorts of things.
So how about the real practicalities of this? Because I'm very mindful that in you mentioned F1, but if we think of more day-to-day at the automotive industry or aerospace, where batch traceability, the ability to track components through, both the production side of cars and aircraft, but also in terms of the after market of spare parts and maintenance, we're all used to the very simple concept that if there's something found wrong with our car, 5 years later, we get a letter from BMW or Audi saying, we need to recall it, that particular batch had a problem, please come in and we will replace that particular part of the car. How do we get that kind of very well established discipline into a sector where we've got to start tagging materials, we've got to start having QR codes? How do we actually make that happen when we have arguably a sector that is used to delivering lorry loads of equipment and materials and leaving it in a muddy construction site? How do we actually make that happen, Sankka?
Yeah, I think here the answer will be how we use the data, to be honest, how we collect the data. So you had mentioned QR codes. QR code has been used in tracking inventory or warehouse management for a long time, and I think this is where construction can also be used. Already there are many people who are using RFID to understand inventory, but as you said, there are many things which you just scrap and throw it away, which is not good for sustainable building materials method. So I think one of the major things we can do is how we collect that data and make sure that there is a centralized system, and also I like to say this word more, but interoperability, so that what data you're collecting can be used in other project management tools as well. So no, quite necessarily, it's not that everyone can solve everything, but there are different elements who can solve. So we are also looking into sort of integrating with BIM 360 or Procore, just to give those project managers that sort of information which we are collecting. So can I share my screen?
Yeah, fine.
So what we do is we assign QR codes to each element, which can be basically scanned using our web application, and you can easily assign where they are in the supply chain. So even if they are going for disposal, you can also mark them out. So that information really stays on the dashboard. And other thing we're trying to do is we are also launching this IoT devices. So this works more like Apple AirTags. So these elements can be easily put post-production into all your elements. So say facade panels, offsite builds, or any other sort of thing. And our application can easily detect what digitally verify where these elements are at what stage and which floor also. So this can give more accuracy, more automation ability also.
So you talked about interoperability, and as you develop this platform linking to things like 360. What kind of data-driven decisions do you foresee people using this data for? Because obviously, on the face of it, very obviously, there's that tracking through the supply chain itself. But what sort of decisions do you think this should be able to help the construction sector with?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's like how it can improve, the way people maintain their data. To be honest, one of the things is that they spend hours and hours on validating data from pen and paper and then putting into Excel, doing this. So what we can do is having a centralized system. It's like you do it and all the project managers can have a real-time view of what's happening. And also on the other thing, if you could see, we extracted the data from BIM model. So this gives, you can say, more data authenticity, or you can understand which data is from what point. So BIM as having BIM as a source of truth is in itself a great way to do And
Indeed.
on the on other part also with project managers or even project owners, they can have that visibility of where their expensive materials are in the supply chain or where they are. So most of it, I remember one project manager famously saying that I know I bought a gift for my wife when it's arriving, but I don't know where my multi-million-dollar stuff is coming the other day. So it just shows that the essential requirement of
Yeah, I
knowledge.
know it's a sobering thought in that way. So, what do you see as with all new kind of systems and approaches? What do you see as the barriers for actually getting the sector to adopt this kind of platform?
I think one of the things you have spoken before as well is like data working in silos and not sort of having everyone has their own version of data. So what they think it works, it doesn't work for the other person. So I think that's there. And also in construction, it's very difficult to make sure that supplier comes on board. So because how will they sort of give that information? So that's why we're designing something from the bottom up. So we are understanding that we need to integrate all the stakeholders at one point. So we're giving suppliers that sort of automation tool, like as you mentioned before, the BIM model extraction, giving them all the product information, sort of a single platform where they can see what the elements are, not only their product specs, but also update the information there rather than just going back and forth calling them. And at the same time, project managers also, one of the great things which project managers can do adopting such technology is they can just have more time to themselves. End of the day, they don't need to sit down and say, okay, pick up the call and say multiple calls, where this, where that, but they have this information. And another brilliant thing is the visualization aspect, where you can send reports and you can send the visualization to your project owners, and they don't need to, just on a click of a button you can see what's happening on your site end of the day, so you do not have to go through multiple report channels. So
And as you're developing this and talking to customers and the market, what sort of impact are you seeing around offsite modern methods of construction, modular construction? Because clearly you're then looking at a situation where even more valuable elements will be arriving on site prefabricated, with once again timing even more critical in terms of linking with other trades. What are you seeing when you're out there talking to the market?
yeah, this is a very interesting model, to be honest. Offsite construction has become more popular, and more contractors are looking into building offsite. One of the reasons is that it's faster, it's more controlled environment execution, and also it's better for it's sustainable. So you're less waste and you're producing more. So as more and more offsite becomes popular, what will happen is construction site will become more of an assembly unit. So it'll be more, how the car manufacturing works. Parts come from different places in the world and get there. So this is where I think we will come into much more, prevalence, because you get to understand where each element is coming from. So you can have, say, 30, 40, 50 subcontractors at that time or suppliers at the time. So you need a unified presence where you can have project control and understand where how the progress is going, and at the same time having the ability to visualize how the progress is going. At the same time, you can backtrack and see what's been delayed, what's not. So
and I suppose a natural evolution of that, Sankka, is thinking about the kind of circularity approach, the kind of material bank, where hopefully if you have a better understanding of the materials that have gone into the building, when you then come to decommission or renew, there's hopefully a better understanding of how to look at those materials. So are you, as you develop this platform, are you looking at a way of almost having a through the life cycle, a kind of a tracking perspective, so that you can understand when an asset comes to its end of life, how to actually reprocess that, repurpose those materials?
yes, I think that's very important aspect to our platform as well. Is And I think one of the things with sustainability can only be achieved with data clarity. So we need to have the data clarity of, not just what the impact of each cladding is, but what's happening end of the life cycle as well. So us having that sort of information of where, how much amount of cladding or what has been used on the project, at the end of the life cycle, you can easily understand what's been going outside this economy and what you're bringing in, and what is, so that gives you sort of the data, I think. And I think you will agree that sustainability without data is impossible.
It's
There are,
very difficult.
yeah,
Very difficult.
and
And I suppose
I think project manager wants to bring
yeah.
more sustainability, but it has to go through data and process changes, right?
So finally, Sankka, what does 2022 have for you in terms of your roadmap, in terms of releases and getting into the market? What does 2022 look like for you?
Being positive now, because we already have executed one of the projects. We are tracking the offsite wheel facade panels. So
Okay.
we have saved sort of around 10 to 15 hours of time per week for project managers just documenting things. On the other things, what we have done is that we are also working with prefabricated companies where we can give them that dashboard and analysis where they can plan how the material will go from their manufacturing unit to site. So there are quite few case studies which are going, and 2022 looks interesting, to be honest.
Good. Well, that's great to hear. Well, it's been fascinating to hear what you're doing today, and I look forward to chatting again perhaps later in the year to see how things are going. But for the moment, Sankka, thanks for your time and have a great day.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.